Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. This episode is brought to you by my friends over at E-residency Estonia. If you're a globetrotting digital nomad, expat, freelancer, or somebody with a business, whether that's just you or an aspiring unicorn like some of the many other unicorns that have come out of Estonia, then look at E-residency Estonia the next time you're thinking about where to establish your business. E-residency is a digital identity issued by the Republic of Estonia, which is in the European Union, to foreign nationals, that means non-Estonians, giving them digital access to the country's advanced online infrastructure and open business environment. And when I say advanced, I mean advanced. They've been doing digital for decades. E-residents can start a company 100% online from wherever they are in the world, run it remotely, open business bank accounts, and even submit their annual reports, all with their electronic ID card. It's literally international business without borders for location-independent entrepreneurs, perfect for the About Abroad audience. The next time you're thinking about where to establish your business, look at E-residency Estonia via the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to the episode. We spend a lot of time talking about remote work here on About Abroad, and in today's discussion, we take that to a whole different level. My guest today joins me from one of the most remote places in the world. That is the South Pole, very literally the South Pole in Antarctica. And his name is Joe Spins the Globe, or at least that's how he's known across multiple social media platforms where he has millions of followers following his journey living in Antarctica. He walks us through how his life came to be in Antarctica, what he thinks of it now, what he's planning on doing in the future, and how you too could join him in Antarctica if you chose to. So super fascinating discussion, one of the most interesting interviews I've done so far on this show, and I had a blast learning more about what it's like living at the South Pole. We had to do the interview over satellite Wi-Fi, which, as you can imagine, coming from Antarctica is a little bit slow. So we did have a bit of a delay between the two of us, but I think it worked out great. And in the end, it's just a fascinating discussion. So I hope you'll enjoy, and I hope you will help me in welcoming Joe Spins the Globe to About Abroad. Joe, welcome to About Abroad. How you doing, my friend?
Good, Chase. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm pretty stoked for this conversation, I have to be honest, because I jokingly said in the intro to my last season that we pretty much touched on all corners of the world so far except for Antarctica, kind of thinking like, haha, yeah, like we'll never get to Antarctica. But I said, if you know anybody that's living in Antarctica, send them my way, because that would be like that would check that last box for me. And here we are, talking to you, living in Antarctica, and you are literally the first person that I've ever met that's been to Antarctica. So I'm super excited to learn from you what life is like down there.
Very cool. Yeah, it's definitely a super unique place. People call it the harshest environment on Earth. It's definitely a trip. I've actually wanted to get down here since I was a little kid. I never dreamed I would get to the South Pole. I thought maybe I'd take a trip to the coast somewhere, but a lot of stars aligned for me to get down here and live and work. For a 9-month contract. And yeah, I'm super happy to be on the show and share with you what the life is like down here.
That's sweet. When you say that, that's kind of that's like a very interesting point right off the top there, like the coast and the South Pole. I think some people might think like, oh, Antarctica, South Pole, synonymous, but like yes. The coast is quite far from the actual pole. So describe that to somebody, because it's not super, super difficult to take like a boat, I guess, from the south of South America or something to get to Antarctica and just touch the coastline and go back. But you're like deep in the interior, right?
Right. So actually, I didn't realize that distinction was such a misunderstanding until I started my TikTok. And then I was saying I'm living at the South Pole, in all my videos. And then I just get all these comments. They're like, "Where in the South Pole are you?" And I realized that people don't realize the South Pole is one, distinct point of land, which is where we are, pretty far into the interior of the continent. But the continent itself of Antarctica, and I encourage anybody listening to this to look at a map, and just to check it out to see if you see where all the lines of longitude converge in a giant X or star. That's right where the South Pole is. That's right where we are. It's definitely off center from the continent. There's actually a large swath of the continent that we're off center from. That's actually more towards South America. Well, let's see. I have to double check myself on that. Actually, it might be more towards the Indian Ocean or more towards South America, South Atlantic. I mean, but anyway, the point is we're off center from the center of the continent, but the South Pole is not synonymous with Antarctica. Antarctica is a continent that's about the size of the USA and Mexico put together, so it's huge. It's very, very big, and most of it is the same. It's just this high altitude, 9,300 feet or about 2,800 meters height in altitude, and it's just this flat plateau of ice and snow, millions of square miles of just that going on forever and ever at the size of the US. So try to wrap your brain around that. And that's what Antarctica is. I am at the South Pole where all the lines of longitude of the globe converge. We're not too far from the coast. It's about 3 hours flight from the coastal station, McMurdo, and that's by propeller plane. So we're not, I want to say we're 800 miles from McMurdo, so not super far, considering the entire continent is about 3,000 miles across in most places. So yeah, we're not on the coast, but South Pole is definitely a distinct spot. Antarctica is the entire continent, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, it does. And it probably clears up a little bit of confusion. So let's just, I want to know the backstory because, it's not I get a lot of people on the show here is like, I moved to Bali, I moved to California from France, I moved to Brazil from, Mexico or whatever. But like, you moved to Antarctica, like one of the most remote places on Earth. And I know you're not there for forever, but I mean, it's a super interesting story. So what's the backstory and what are you doing there?
Sure. So I'm a physician assistant by trade in the US and a handful of other countries. That's kind of like a mid-level doctor. Like I work under a doctor, but I can do most of the things that they can do. So there's myself and a station doctor here, and we basically provide medical support for the crew. We're not super busy because there's only 40 people on the station and they're mostly healthy. But in the US, that's a 4-year, you have to get your undergraduate 4-year degree, and then it's a master's program to get that title, the physician assistant title. During my training, I actually was taught by a guy who was a doctor in the 80s down here at the South Pole. And I was just inspired by his experience. And ever since then, I I've always thought Antarctica was really cool. But then once I heard him talking about it, I saw this like pathway of me getting down here. That was about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. I've tried ever since to get down here. I had to get a little bit more experience, relevant experience, doing medicine in really remote places. And then just this opportunity opened up this year and I applied for probably the 5th time and somebody else retired and I jumped in. So I do feel like I got to skip a few steps because usually there's kind of like an order where you might work at the coastal station for a year or two, and then maybe you'll work your way up to here. And I kind of skipped a few steps and got to jump right here, which I feel super lucky. But that's not every job here. Actually, most jobs don't require, an advanced degree. You can come here and wash dishes. You can work in supply and logistics, which means you're basically checking inventory and bringing boxes up from the storage up to the main station. If you're a chef, you can work in the kitchen. There's all sorts of jobs, plumbers, electricians. We're basically a whole society down here in our little spaceship, and we need all sorts of people to keep it running. So I'm just the medical part of that. And that's kind of how it led up to here. I just was always been fascinated with coming down here. And just real quick, when I told people I was coming down here, and it really divided people. I felt like about half of everybody said, immediately got it. Like they just understood the sense of adventure and why I'd want to come down here. And like, it's just really cool. Right. And then the other half were just like, why would you want to do that? And like, I could explain my head off to them about why I wanted to do it, and they still wouldn't get it. So it's like you either get it or you don't. About why you'd want to come down here. It's basically, do you want to go to the most remote place on earth with a sense of adventure, stand somewhere where nobody else has ever stood before in history, or do you just want to stay warm and don't get that at all? It very much divides people, it seems like. Anyway, that was kind of a tangent, but there you go.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting tangent, and I mean, even on like a smaller scale, you get that when I just simply moved to Spain, and I've got people in my life that are like, why would you leave the comfort of the U.S. and the stability that you have and XYZ, and
right.
I think we kind of crave getting out of the comfort zone. Some people do.
Yeah.
And actually there was this guy that I listened to on Joe Rogan's podcast that you might know the name or have heard of him. He walked across Antarctica with a sled, like pulling a sled, I guess. And he was saying on the show, he was like, people say like, why do you keep doing this stuff to yourself? Like why he does all kinds of like crazy stuff like that. And he's like, you can live on the spectrum between 1 and 10, where like 1 is super uncomfortable and 10 is like really comfortable. And he's like, people tend to live in that middle section. He's like, I'd rather have a lot of 1s and a handful of 10s and just kind of like enjoy life. So I get it. Like that really resonated with me.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. Like, do you want to just sit in your little corner of the world and work a 9 to 5 and, put in your time? And if people want to do that, absolutely. That's, I'm not knocking that at all. Like definitely the world, not everybody can be, world traveling adventurer, or else probably the world would stop functioning. But, I think, for the people that want to, but don't let themselves, that's the sad part. Like those people need to actually take the leap and actually try to do something. That's what I hope they do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You got to chase that dream.
Exactly.
What was it like? Well, actually, I have so many questions, but
Sure.
let's some basics here. What are you guys doing there? Like, what is this, and who are you kind of like working for? What's the entity? Is it the U.S. government or is it a private entity? Or
Sure.
And then like, what is the purpose of this society being there?
Sure. So we are here. The only reason we're here is for science. And the kind of science we do down here is astronomy or astrophysical science. So we have some big telescopes here that look at the remnants from the Big Bang, which is the cosmic microwave background. And they just do studies on that to analyze it, to try to find out more about our universe, how it started, where it's going. And there's some pretty big microwave telescopes here that are looking at that. And the reason that here is an ideal location is that we have basically the clearest skies in the world. We have more clear skies than just about anywhere else. We're a desert, so we never get any precipitation. We never get any rain or legitimate snowfall. There is some ice crystals that just kind of trickle out of the sky constantly, but they're not very consequential. So it's great for observing the sky, and the fact that the way the polar day and night works, we only get 1 day and 1 night per year that each lasts 6 months long. And so we actually just had our sunrise for the year a few days ago. And what happens is it confuses everybody. I've made several animations about this on my TikTok because it's very confusing for people. But basically what happens is, from our point of view, the sun goes around, like basically spirals upward. And at the point where it crosses the horizon, it's actually going around the horizon, then finally goes up and up and up until the summer solstice. And then it starts coming back down again. And then at the fall equinox is when sunset happens and it actually dips below the horizon. Anyways, for the 6 months of night, we have basically unobstructed views of the sky. And so the telescopes get even better data during that time. We also have tons of auroras. There's lots of auroras, like Aurora Australis, or the Northern Lights, Southern Lights. People are familiar with that name. We do a lot of studies on those because they're super frequent here. And then the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So NOAA. I mean, people are familiar with NOAA because they predict hurricanes and stuff like that. So NOAA has a station down here where they employ 2 scientists year round, 3 in the summer actually, I think, and they take air samples, analyze the CO2 levels, see like if like human-made pollution is causing an increase in CO2 levels down here, because as you can imagine, there's no large sources of pollution on Antarctica. There's like us with our station generators. There's a few other stations dotted around a continent that's the size, bigger than the US. So you imagine there's basically no pollution here. But we do get it filtered in from the rest of the world. So if we measure the CO2 here, we can kind of get a worldwide average. If it's creeping up, then we know that CO2 levels are just creeping up worldwide. So that's one thing they do. They study the ozone as well, and the ozone hole here at the South Pole, over Antarctica. That's about it. There's some seismology experiments where if there's an earthquake somewhere in the world, the waves actually kind of echo and reverberate down here, and we can help, adding our data to other earthquake sensors around the world. We can kind of help pinpoint where the earthquake came from. So yeah,
such a unique place. Like,
yep.
Is there a governing body for Antarctica, or is there like how is it you guys can have this kind of base there? And you said there's other ones dotted around. I am kind of supposing that they have ties to governments around the world. Sure. Can if Chile wants to put a base on Antarctica, can they just do that, or how is this governed?
Chile actually has a few bases here. So it's governed by the Antarctic Treaty, which was a treaty that 12 different countries came together and signed back in 1956. And they basically said no one can make any future land claims to Antarctica. Nobody's going to make it a nation or a national territory. It's going to be a no man's land. We're preserving it for science. We're preserving it. Can't do any weapons testing, no nuclear testing, because that was big back in the 50s when the Cold War was kicking off. But basically the only people down here and the only stations down here are government entities. So for us, we are at the top level is the U.S. government, and then part of the U.S. government is the National Science Foundation, or NSF. And then under them is the U.S. Antarctic Program, or USAP. And then USAP subcontracts to everybody that works here. So my direct employer is the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, that UTMB. University of Texas actually is the subcontractor that provides all the medical support for all the U.S. stations. But there's probably 7 or 8 companies total that subcontract to provide all the different services. But it's the U.S. Antarctic Program and the National Science Foundation that are the big overall heads of these stations and direct our research, give us direction for where we're going with this. So for other nations, they all have pretty similar structures. Usually it's, their government, then their science department figures out, how to support their stations down here. But there are a lot of stations. Some of them are seasonal. Actually, a lot of them are seasonal. There are only, maybe 24 stations that are actually occupied throughout the entire winter, which is probably more than most people realize. The U.S. has 3 stations, and then we have Chile, Italy, France, Russia, South Africa, UK, and I'm trying to think if there's any other nations represented. I'm probably forgetting one. Sorry if anybody from that country is listening.
China?
China does, actually. Yeah, China has 2 stations, I think. Yep. Japan. Actually.
Russia?
Russia does. Russia definitely. Russia actually has the closest station to us. They have a Vostok station, which is even further out in the middle of nowhere than we are. I think they're about 700 miles.
How close is the closest station?
700 miles away.
In terms of travel there.
Yeah. So
700 miles. The closest station, 700 miles away.
Yes. 700 miles away is the closest station to us.
That's your neighbor.
That's our neighbor, basically. Yeah. People have asked, do you have other countries down there? Do you ever stop by, and say hi? I'm like, yeah, well, they're 700 miles away. So it's kind of hard to stop by for coffee or vodka or whatever.
Yeah, I was envisioning like, like on the weekends, all the stations get together, people from the stations probably get together and have dinner, you talk with your Chinese counterparts
Yeah.
and nope, that's
No, although
not the
I
case.
will say, yeah, that's true. Out here on the actual continent, away from the coast, it's not really like that. McMurdo Station, which is the biggest station, it's the U.S. station, but it's kind of like our headquarters for everything on the continent. There is literally just around the corner, like probably half a mile away, or a kilometer away from McMurdo, is a New Zealand station called Scott Base. And they're pretty friendly, and so there is a lot of like socialization and commingling going on there between McMurdo and Scott Base. But those are the only two real nearby that I know of. Yeah,
The Kiwis are usually pretty friendly. They're
no,
they're
they're pretty
liked
cool.
everywhere they go,
Yeah, they are.
including Antarctica.
Yeah,
How many people in total, like if you just rough number, like are on the continent at any given time? Like, is it hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands? I have no clue.
it's very seasonal, and even the seasonal numbers were also affected by COVID. So this winter was probably the lowest population on the continent that we've had for a long time. So let's say there's 40 here, 150-ish over winter at McMurdo, and I really doubt all the other stations put together put the number over 500. So under 500, 400 or 500 people total on the continent over winter. Now, since we're getting a better handle on COVID, people are getting vaccinated, and summer's coming around, and a lot of scientists put their research on hold this summer and winter because of COVID. Like they've all got to come back to it, because you lose a year of data. It's not the worst thing in the world. You lose 2 years, like your study's done. Like there's no trend. You can't paint that line very well if you're missing 2 years of data. Everybody's coming back, and I expect it's going to be well over 1,000, probably over summer, because McMurdo itself will have 400 to 500. I'm guessing. I think they have about 300 now, and they're getting more. So, yeah, that's about a rough number. I don't think there's ever more than 2,000 on the continent ever at one time, or has been. But I could be wrong. I'm not an encyclopedia on Antarctica. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, but in a place that's roughly the size of North America, or like the U.S. and Mexico, I mean, you're talking about 2,000 people. It's pretty sparsely populated. And I wanted to go back to the sunrise sunset thing you mentioned, because did I understand you correctly that basically like the sun basically rises once every 6 months and sets once every 6 months, and so it's light for 6 months and then total darkness for 6 months. Is that
that's
correct?
correct. Yeah, and it's maybe a misnomer to say rise, because, like I said, it really moves in a spiral around the horizon. And if it's the spring equinox, which we just had here in the southern hemisphere, then it's doing a slowly rising spiral until it gets to a certain point in the sky in the middle of the summer solstice, and then it starts slowly spiraling down. So I haven't seen a normal day and night since January, really, since I was in San Francisco, or since I was in Christchurch, I guess. Um, I've become so used to either total darkness or the sun just moving horizontally in the sky that I think it's going to be weird when I go back home and see an actual sunrise and sunset like in a 24-hour period. It's going to blow my mind, because I've gotten so used to it.
We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This season is brought to you by my good friends over at Insured Nomads. They're the absolute best in the business when it comes to providing health, travel, and medical insurance for nomads, expats, and really just all forms of world travelers. I know insurance is often something that's overlooked when we're fantasizing about traveling the world, but it's absolutely necessity that we address this, because often the policy you have in your home country isn't going to cover you while you're abroad. And it's also a requirement, as a lot of people may not realize, to actually buy private travel or expat insurance, as it's called sometimes, to obtain a visa or even enter certain countries. So fortunately, there are companies like Insured Nomads to help us with this. Not only do they have excellent coverage and great prices, but they're also providing a first-class experience with additional perks and best-in-class technology via their app. It's an amazing experience. I can't recommend it enough. Now, this is a company that was built by world travelers for world travelers. So They know what it's like to find yourself in a difficult medical situation abroad, and they want to keep you from having that same bad experience. So the next time you're planning a trip abroad, whether it's for a week or a lifetime, check out Insured Nomads via the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to the episode. What was it like when you saw the sun for the first time after how long did you go without sun? And then what was that like when the sun rose? Was it just like, did it, I'm so
Yeah,
curious. Yeah, just, I'll let you go with it.
it bordered on a religious experience, I would say, because the sun goes down at our fall equinox, which is in March 22nd. It's still a little light, for about 5-6 weeks after that. As you imagine, like when anytime you've seen a sunset, it doesn't get dark as soon as the sun goes down. Like you have the afterglow and twilight and everything. And so the twilight period for us lasts about 5 or 6 weeks, and then it gets totally dark. And of course, the night sky looks amazing. The auroras, the southern lights look amazing. But after a while, it starts to wear on you. You're like, I haven't seen the sun in a long time. You have like these full spectrum sun lamps that we gave everybody to use to kind of help your body make up for the lack of that type of light. But then when you start seeing the glow come back, it's weird. Like at the end of the darkness period, like I just felt so low energy. Like my body just felt like it wanted to hibernate. I was sleeping like twice as much as I normally do, and I don't like that. I don't like to sleep more than I need to. I was taking naps all the time. My mood was a bit lower. And, anybody listening to this will probably recognize that that's a lot of symptoms of like seasonal affective disorder, which obviously is very easy to get here because we have 6 months of darkness. So I was definitely experiencing a little bit of that. But then you start to see the glow come back, and it's just all that just starts turning around. Well, for me at least, immediately. I just started feeling more energy, sleeping less. And then when you actually, like a few days ago, when we actually saw like the sun just starting to beam in through the windows, it was amazing. It was like you forget what it looks like, which sounds really weird because you see pictures of it. We watch movies obviously here, and you see sunlight in movies, but like actually feeling like the strength of the sun hit you in the face and like in the eyes and like in your sight. I don't know. It's a different feeling, and one that can't be replaced by anything. And you almost forget what it's like until in the 6 months between seeing it. So definitely a mind-blowing experience to go that long without it, and then suddenly seeing it again. Yeah. It's hard to describe, but it's just the brightness of it, the colors, like, yeah, it's you appreciate it so much more than you would a normal sunrise. I'll just leave it at that, I guess.
I guess I can imagine when you do go back to like a more normal life, like you probably will never take a sunrise for granted again, or at least for a while.
I don't think I will. I mean, I don't know if I ever did in the past, but I definitely won't now. I'm definitely Florida born and raised, and I've always loved seeing the sunsets, over the water there on the Gulf Coast. But yeah, I definitely won't take it for granted now. The upside, though, of not seeing the sun for so long and the sun being so slow to rise is that we've really been having a sunrise here for about the past 3 or 4 days. And so you get that cool light, on the horizon. You get like all the cool colors as the sun's beaming through the clouds. So we've just been taking a ton of pictures. So it really is like a whole 24-hour day in, normal places on Earth is just smeared out over a whole year instead. And so any process that happens during normal days just happens over, if the disk of the sun getting above the horizon takes 3-4 minutes or whatever in the rest of the world, it takes 2 days here. So you just get to wake up and be like, oh yeah, sun's inched a little bit higher above the horizon today, cool, all right. And the other weird thing is I hadn't seen my shadow for 6 months. And so actually just going outside and like seeing shadows of buildings, seeing my own shadow was weird, actually. I mean, that's another thing. It's nothing I would have ever thought about. And I didn't ever think, oh, I missed my shadow. But just going outside and actually seeing shadows was strange. Yeah.
That's something I would have never thought to consider, but it takes these kind of experiences to give you that sort of perspective, I guess. Like to appreciate your shadow. That's a pretty unique thing.
Yep.
What else do you like what else do you feel that like for instance, okay, so people listening don't know this yet, but like you get like I think you told me 2 hours of Wi-Fi or something like that. You can correct me on the number if I'm wrong, but like what else do you sort of okay, 5 hours. Okay, I was off. But like we had to line this up for a certain time. It's late where you are. So like what else are you sort of limited on and like what differentiates Antarctica aside from the fact that you're in one of the most remote places in the world on an ice plateau at the South Pole? What else is sort of like limited and differentiates it from normal life?
Sure. So, I mean, we are extremely remote, obviously. Our satellite internet lasts 5 hours a day. Our good internet lasts 5 hours a day. We get a couple hours of spotty, uh, pretty bad internet other parts of the day. But other limitations we have, probably the one most people would mention that live here, is that from February to October, um, is what we call station close for winter. And it's not that we leave, we stay here, but no transports come in and out. Like nobody can actually leave, like go in, go or come here. And we also don't get any shipments in that time, for a good 6, 7 months. So we don't get any fresh food as far as that goes. We do have a greenhouse, so we can grow some greens as far as like spinach and lettuce and some herbs. So at least we have that. But as far as fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, most of those we basically ran out in April. And so imagine, going months and months without an apple or an orange or banana. And I'm a big fruit eater. Like I eat fruits and nuts all the time when I'm at home. And so that was a big adjustment for you. Like no fresh food. Everything's basically frozen or comes out of the greenhouse. Other limitations is that the only way of communicating with the outside world is via the internet. And you should probably be a kind of a people person, because you're stuck with, like, I'm stuck with 38 other people here in the station, which is a pretty big station. But it's really, you can't really get away from people. If you hate somebody, then avoiding them, you can maybe avoid one person, but if there's any more than that, like, you're probably going to have a bad time. So you're limited in where you can go. There's no escape. Like if you really just hate the place or you hate the people or something, and then you're kind of screwed, which I don't. I love it here. What else?
On that note, let me ask, what's the sleeping situation like? Like what's the infrastructure like? Do you have like, I'm imagining you each don't have your own little white picket fence suburban style house. So
Yeah, good.
what are you living in?
Good point. So the station is divided into pods. Two of those pods are strictly rooms, dorms, basically. Everybody gets their own room, but they're pretty small. I think it's about, I want to say it's 7 by 10, maybe, is your room. And it's basically big enough for a bed, a desk, and your dresser and a closet. And so it's pretty small, but it's funny because when I first got here, I looked at my room. I was like, man, this is tiny. Like, this is tinier than like a room on a cruise ship or something. But it's really weird. You adapt to the space. Like, after living here for months now, I'm like, this is fine. Like, I feel like I have plenty of room, but I also don't spend a whole lot of time in my room. So the bathrooms are shared. You don't have an in-room, en-suite bathroom or anything like that. So at the entrance to each pod, there's men and women's bathrooms with showers in there. So that's kind of the living situation. Everybody has their own room. Luckily, or fortunately, in the winter, our population is low enough that you can actually take over a second room if you want to use for storage, put extra furniture in there you don't want, or extra luggage, get it out of your way. Because there's only 39 people here, and we have a capacity of 150 to 180 if we really stretch it. So we have lots of room to stretch out, and lots of room just to be on your own and find your own space too, which is nice. I've thought about the fact of, like, would I come back in the summer, and I'm not sure I'd be able to deal with that many people around the station after having gotten used to it being so quiet around here all the time. Because I kind of like that. But I don't know, maybe in the future.
Yeah, you've kind of had like your own little village to yourself in a way, and like All the people come rushing in. You're like, what are you doing? You're treading on my territory here.
But I think that happens for everybody. Like I'm sure the people that felt like that when I came in here. So yeah, that's a living situation. The shower. I'll just touch on another quick thing. Is the showering situation is most people on station because we have to melt our water from the ice and from the snow. We actually have this well, this big cylindrical well, well away from the station, where we pump like hot water in, melt ice, and then pump everything out, and that's where our water comes from. So we try to conserve it because it takes energy to do that. So most people on station are limited to 2 showers a week, and they're asked to limit those to 2 minutes each. So if you have a lot of hair or something,
Wow.
you might one shower might be actually washing your body. The next shower might be you're like washing your hair or something. I don't have any hair, so it's a little bit easier for me, or at least I get rid of it anyways. So now, if you have a particularly dirty job, like if you're a mechanic in the vehicle maintenance facility and you get greasy every day or something, then you can shower more often. Or if you work in the food services, if you're the chef, then you're allowed to shower every day, just because everybody's fine with the people making your food being as clean as possible. So yeah,
Yeah, that person we want bathed and sanitized as often as possible. I'll give up my shower for the chef to have his shower.
exactly right. Nobody side eyes them for having more showers than them. Everybody understands that part.
What mentioning the chef, what about the eating situation? Do you guys, is it like a mess hall kind of thing, or like, and I mean, I know you're short on fruits and vegetables and stuff, but is the food decent?
Yeah, I think it's really dependent on who you have in so we call it the galley, and that's kind of a holdover term from when this was a Navy base like 50 years ago. And there's a lot of nautical terms that actually go around the station. But it's really the cafeteria is what it is. But we call it the galley. It really depends on the chef.
Galley sounds cooler.
Yeah, yeah. It really depends on the chefs you have working. This winter, we've actually had some really awesome chefs. Like all three of them are really good, really talented, um, really good at just making the best out of everything we have. Because, like I said, basically everything we have now is frozen unless it came out of the greenhouse, and they will take that and turn it into something amazing. Really, no complaints. Like you could complain about the lack of fresh fruit or something, but that's definitely out of their hands. But they do an amazing job with what they have, and I think they deserve a ton of credit. They have even so certain times of the year we have special events like our sunset dinner or our midwinter dinner or our sunrise dinner that we just had last weekend, and some of the chefs have actually brought like specialized supplies from home, like of their own by themselves in their own luggage, to be able to make something special for us. Like one of our chefs brought all this gold flake, like real gold flake that he could make, put on desserts and stuff to just make something extra special. And yeah, they just really go the extra mile. And I think that does a huge amount for morale on station, especially as the winter months drag on. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I can imagine.
yeah,
And how about social life? Like
sure.
you mentioned the people, that you got to be you got to not hate each other. You're in a you're 40 people in a small space.
Yeah.
But is there some camaraderie there? Like, do you have some fun, or is it just like work and sleep and eat, or what's that like?
No, actually, we do a fair like we keep a fairly full social schedule, which is good because as you can imagine, being so isolated and being cold a lot of the times, if you're going outside and being without sunlight, like just maintaining your sanity can be a part-time job. So everybody has like the clique that they kind of fit in with better, but generally everybody gets along. We do a ton of community events, do a lot of holidays. Like July 4th, we did a big like kind of like a county fair style thing in the gym where we had a chili cook off and like all these kind of carnival games that we made up and stuff like that. That was really fun. And we will do every week we do sci-fi Sundays where we'll, watch a few episodes of a sci-fi series that we're going through. Saturdays, actually we just finished Marvel movie nights on Saturdays. We're going through the entire Marvel movie catalog, which was really fun. There's all sorts of card game tournaments. I think actually tomorrow's two of my colleagues are actually putting on a bingo night. And Some of us have taken it on ourselves to actually dress up as old people and do like, wrinkles for makeup and everything like that. So we try to make things as fun as possible. I'll probably watch or hear this interview in like a year and be like, man, that sounds so lame. But it's really just, it really, it's not the thing itself. It's just the fact that everybody does it and does it wholeheartedly, and everybody's like really into whatever function we're doing. And that definitely adds to the camaraderie, helps the morale, like builds all the social bridges and everything.
That's it, man. I mean, we crave that as humans. Like we just want to belong a little bit, and so having that sense of community is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sensing maybe that you're going to ask a follow-up question about dating, so I'll just go ahead and cover that as well. So a lot of people have asked me that on my TikTok as well. Is like, are you allowed to date? A lot of people on my TikTok too have asked, are you allowed to date? Is like dating forbidden or whatever? And my response is like, even if it was forbidden, I'm pretty sure it would still happen. Like you can't keep people apart, But so dating is allowed, any kind of relationship that people want to have, they can have. People tend to be a little bit more muted about it here than in the real world because, most people that come down here are heterosexual. We represent kind of a fair amount of the fair representation of like the normal world population. So that being said, the ratio of men to women down here is usually pretty abysmal. It's usually like 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 women to men. So it's not like, you shouldn't, if you do end up dating someone or being with somebody, you shouldn't just be like flaunting it in front of everybody else who's maybe missing their wife or girlfriend back home or, is single, but, struck out with the girls that were here when they had the chance at the beginning of the season or something like that. So, it's good to be conscientious and not, try to make out and do PDA in front of everybody in the galley or something like that. Be discreet, be conscientious. But definitely it does happen. A lot of people ask me for the details. I can't really talk about the details. That's people's private lives and everything. So, but it definitely does happen.
I won't go too deep into that, but I'm glad
Yeah.
you shared that because that is an interesting real part of life. And when you're kind of isolated with just 40 people, it's kind of slim pickings. So
Yeah.
that's good to touch on.
Yeah. And a lot of people have spouses or significant others back home. And I couldn't imagine doing that. I couldn't do that personally, having a significant other back home that I just, get to talk to every once in a while, or I don't know, I'm not a really long distance kind of relationship person, but this is long distance to another level on top of that. So, yeah. There's also three gay men on station. 2 of them are a couple. So, I mean, there is that contingent as well. But it's just, I guess I would tell people coming down here, don't come down here expecting to meet somebody because the chances are probably slim. Just resign yourself to the fact that you're probably going to be single. If you start single, you're going to be single for the whole time you're here. So that's all I got to say about that, I guess.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point. And actually perfect kind of segue into like, what does someone who wants to go this route, like what advice would you give to somebody who's like hearing this and is like, yeah, I've always wanted to go to Antarctica too. Like I'm called to it just like Joe.
Yeah.
How does one kind of follow in your footsteps?
Sure. So the first thing is that don't feel intimidated or don't feel like I could never do something like that, or that it requires you don't have to be a scientist to come down here. Actually, only a minority of the people here are scientists. I want to say that there's 7, 8 scientists out of a crew of 39. You don't have to have a bachelor's degree. You can just be experienced in a trade like plumber, electrician, chef, anything like that. Because we have a whole community down here, so we need a whole community complement of jobs. And not just here, but in McMurdo. McMurdo has the same kind of thing, and they actually have a wider spectrum of jobs like firefighters and search and rescue pilots, things like that. So if you're interested, I would definitely, the easiest way probably is to Google USAP contracting jobs or contractors, and that can get you to a page that tells you all the different contractors, and then you can kind of hit up those subcontractors to see what jobs are available. The other way to go about it would be to search Leidos, LEIDOS contractors or contracting jobs Antarctica. And that would probably get you to the page that would show you what jobs that Leidos, which is the overarching contractor, jobs they have on offer. Between those two and doing some shrewd Googling, you should be able to figure out what you're looking for. If you're looking to do the medical side like me, I can tell you that you can Google UTMB, University of Texas Medical Branch, Antarctica or Polar Operations Center, and they can you can find the job postings on there for either PA, physician assistant, nurse practitioner, or medical doctor. And I think that's a pretty good start. The biggest thing I would say is just don't be intimidated. Don't feel like you can't do it, because tons of people have come down here and just been a dishwasher or been somebody who's in charge of waste. Basically, empties the trash, sorts the trash into recycling, and that kind of thing. So we need all types down here. You don't have to be some high-powered scientist to get here.
That's a really cool point to make. Like I'm pretty sure, myself included, and everybody listening, you probably imagine you have to get this opportunity, you have to be some uber high skill level and
Nope.
some super serious profession, but it
Not
is
at
true.
all.
It's like a little microcosm of a civilization. You need everybody from the trash collector to the scientist to the surgeon.
Right.
And that's super interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What do most people do? And maybe also you can touch on what your plans do. Like, do most people just come do a season, like 9 months? I know it sounds like some people stay, year round, but what's the general kind of flow? Like, after 9 months, do you rotate off and you never come back, or do people do seasonal work and constantly come back? What does it look like?
It's a mix of both, actually. So there's definitely people that just come down here, do a season here or at McMurdo and be like, yep, I'm good, I'm never going back, and just wanted the one-time experience of it. There's other people that are just like, I kind of want to make a life out of this, and people that have come back, 10, 12 times. That's kind of the high end. I think the person who's repeated the most here so far is our meteorologist, who's been here for 4 or 5 winters, I think. That's another job, meteorologist. And I think most people, we have a very young, new crew this time. So I think most people, this is their first winter. But it just really depends. Some people really resonate with the kind of life you have down here, with the community and the job you do. And it really works for them, and they keep coming back. And for me personally, I could definitely see myself doing this again. I don't think I would come back immediately next winter, and they haven't asked me to yet. So I'm glad I don't have to turn them down, because to come back next winter, the process would have to start in January, and you'd be back here in February, which would give me, basically a month and a half off back home before I'd come right back. And I think that's a little bit too intense for me. I would love to come back the next year or the year after that for the winter or something, or even a summer contract. So basically there's the 3-month summer contract, and then there's the 9-month winter contract. And basically the roles are the same. There's a few more jobs during the summer because it's busier. We're actually getting flights in and out. The science experiments are getting upgrades and getting worked on. The station itself is getting worked on a little bit, upgraded. So a lot more happens. A lot more people are employed during the summer. But the longest that USAP, the U.S. Antarctic Program, likes to employ people is for just 2 consecutive contracts, like a summer and winter or winter summer. Usually it's summer or winter, but like a year. And then they're like, okay, go home. Like, you've been here too long. You start to get a little weird, a little wonky. They call it the slang here in Antarctica is called toasty. If you've been here too long, you've gotten toasty. So there have been exceptions to that. I think the longest anybody's ever stayed here at the South Pole is 540 days. But that's a wild exception. Like, generally it's a year and then you go back home. It's only if you're in an essential position and your replacement's replacement can't make it down here, kind of thing, that you're staying that long. But yeah, it's a mix. People just do a one-off and say that I'm good, and then some people repeat. I'd like to repeat one more time, I think, and then I'd probably be good. I feel like there's a few projects that I wanted to do that I never got around to here during my time. But yeah, it's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, and so people that rotate, like people that do that kind of one on, one off sort of thing, is not to get too personal into like the financials of it, but I mean, just in general, is it one of those things where like some people go and work on an oil rig for 3 months and then they go back and they chill for 3 months?
Yeah.
Is it sort of that kind of mindset, like where you're like, oh, I worked for 9 months and now I got 3 months off,
Yeah.
or is it, am I off base there?
No, I think that's pretty fair for a lot of people when they take this contract for winter and then they have the time off. Um, I definitely think if you did the 9 months on, 3 months off, you'd probably in the mode of saving a lot of money. You probably have some goals for your savings there because you're gonna save money. Like being here, you have almost no expenses. The only expenses you have, the only thing you can spend money on is at the store. And that's basically if you want to buy a South Pole hoodie, you want to buy some postcards, or you want to buy some alcohol. And that's basically your expenses. Everything else is taken care of. Like even
The
you go down
essentials.
the essentials, yeah. The all your food is provided for free. It's unlimited. Like however much you want to eat, you can eat. Coffee, all your essentials are taken care of. Basically, even you go down to the laundry room, and all the machines are complimentary, free. The laundry detergent and the fabric softener is free and provided for you. So everything for your health and wellness here is provided for. If you want to poison yourself with some alcohol or buy some souvenirs, that's on you, and you got to spend money for that. But yeah, you have very few expenses, so you can't.
Not included in the all-inclusive ticket.
Yeah, exactly. Just like a cruise ship. So you, so
Yeah.
you have to, yeah. I mean, you save a lot of money, and so I factored that in when I took the job. The pay for me is actually pretty much on par with what I would make back in the States. So I'm not getting paid like $1 million to be here or anything like that, but I'm also not getting shortchanged. It's pretty much on par with what a emergency room PA would make back in the States. So, which is my background. So yeah, but you do save a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a pretty sweet gig in that way. Like if you're not gonna have a lot to spend for that time. You get a
Hmm.
really cool lifelong dream bucket list item checked off, and
Yep.
a lot of cool new experiences, and a little money in the bank at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. It can't
Pretty
can't
sweet.
argue with that. Exactly.
I have a super random question. I know we're running out of time, so I'll try to wrap it up. But how about exercise? Do you guys have a gym there, or do you do any like fitness classes together or anything?
Yeah, actually, I've taken on that role a little bit, and being one of the medical providers here on station, is that some people will come to me and be like, "Hey, can you come up with a workout plan for me or a diet plan?" Which I'm happy to do because, like I said, we have 40 fairly healthy people on station here, so we don't do a whole lot in the clinic. We're mostly here for catastrophes. So I'm happy to help people out like that. But we do have a gym. It's not a full size basketball gym. It's maybe a third smaller than a full size as far as the length. And that actually takes up an entire pod. So we have four main pods that stick off from the station, and one of those whole pods is the basketball gym. So we play a lot of volleyball. We started playing pickleball recently, actually. Some basketball definitely gets played. And then above that, above the kind of overlooking the basketball gym, is our weight room, where we have all sorts of aerobic equipment like ellipticals and treadmills and full complement of weights, bench press, dumbbells, squat rack, all that stuff, and machines. Smith machine. So yeah,
Wow.
we definitely have, with all the free time we have down here, it's a common thing for probably about half the station gets into the gym, pretty regularly. So it's definitely something you want to do for your mental health as well as your physical health, is just stay engaged and exercise for sure.
That's actually why I asked.
Yeah, that was one of my main questions when I took the job, or when I was getting interviewed for the job. I was like, wait a minute. I think I actually accepted the job. And then I was like, wait a minute, do they even have a gym down there? Like, am I just going to like waste away and like go crazy because I can't work out? And then I saw some pictures online of like the weight room. I was like, oh, okay, good. They got everything I need. So yeah. A lot of people do P90X down
Nice.
here.
No apples, but
Yeah, no
yeah.
apples,
Ah,
but
yeah,
you
yeah.
can work out.
P90X. That's it.
Yeah. Or other, video workout programs are popular too. So yeah, it's definitely essential. I'm glad they thought of that when they built the station, that they're like, people need to work out and exercise. Great. And dedicating a
Yeah,
whole
it's
pod
so
to it is
important for
great.
mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Good use of space there.
for sure.
Well, hey, I've learned so much and I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I could probably just keep talking to you for hours, but I know we got limited time here. It's really late or slash early in the morning there. So I want to let you go, but kind of just one last question, kind of coming back to we talked about this early on, like sort of the why, like why people come there, why you felt called there. There are people that got it and people that didn't. But it seems pretty clear to me, at least, like why someone would want to do this. But how would you kind of define like that in a general sense? Like, why do people feel called to come here and to return? Obviously you have to overcome some struggles, some limitations. Some people would say it's a hard life, an isolated life, but like there's a really strong why there and a conviction. And so I'm just curious, like, what is the why? Like, what resonates about Antarctica?
Yeah. So for me, it really comes down to, I hate to say it like this, but it's almost like people who climb Everest. It's like because it's there, is part of the reason why I
Yeah.
wanted to come down here. It's so remote. It's like the last frontier on Earth that isn't totally overrun by people. I remember as a kid just looking at a map. My parents in my house where I grew up had a giant wallpaper map of like the entire world, and I just would look all over it, looking for places that had been unexplored or places that could, where is the adventure in the world now? And like I would always come back to Antarctica, and like it just seemed like such a wild and harsh continent, that it's always been in my mind to come here. And I think for people that have that same sense of adventure, they get it. For people that want to stay warm and cozy and have access to their Netflix shows, which we don't get down here because our internet's not fast enough, they won't get it, and that's fine. Like I totally get everybody's different and has a different bent, and that's fine. But as far as the why for everybody, there's kind of a saying down here, and that is that you come the first time for the experience. Just to be on Antarctica, be in Antarctica, or be at the pole, and just for the newness, the novelty of it, you come the first time for that. The second time, you come back for the money because you realize how much you saved being here and not spending it back in society. And then the third time, you come back because you realize this is where you belong, or this is the place where you feel most at home, strangely enough. And I think that ties back into our other question of like, do people repeat? And that's, I think, why. It's like, because you find that if you come back a third time, you've basically found a community that you fit in with, and that a lifestyle that you like, and in a place that's pretty fantastical. So I think that's the best I can sum it up.
Yeah, you summarized it well. It was a pretty broad question, but you hit the nail on the head. I feel like I can totally understand that vantage point, and I understand it a lot better than I did an hour ago. So thanks so much, man. Joe, it's great to meet you. Great to hear a little bit more about your story. I'm following along on social media. I'll put all this in the show notes as well, but tell people where they can learn more about your adventure, and if you don't mind, also close with like what's next for Joe Spins the Globe.
Sure. So, yeah, if anybody wants to follow me on social media, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. All of them are Joe Spins the Globe. I've actually been really bad about updating my YouTube since I got here because we had some firewall problems with the internet, and TikTok is also where I just kind of blew up and got up to 1 million followers the other day. So kind of been ignoring my other social medias for TikTok, unfortunately, but I'm going to get back to those other ones. What's next for me is going home, or maybe actually traveling through New Zealand if the government allows us to on our way back through, which would be awesome. I'd love to do 3 weeks in New Zealand. But long term, what I'd like to do is continue traveling. If you go to my YouTube, you can see a lot of my former travels. I'd like to continue bringing and showing the world just rare and wondrous places on the earth, places that you may have never seen before, or a side of the world that you've never seen before. And I plan on continuing doing that as long as I can. I don't know if any place can actually top the South Pole, but I'm sure going to try. So
yeah, you've hit the pinnacle early on, but
yeah.
like I think that's such a fun mission to take the road less traveled. Show there's so many corners of the world that are yet to really be explored, which is hard to imagine sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, I live in Europe, which sometimes feels a little bit like Disneyland, like
Yeah.
especially when all the tourists are here and stuff. You're like, it's just like big tour groups walking through, and you think like, how can you? And in fact, like I can say like we were just on a vacation and trying to get deep into nature, quote unquote, in Switzerland.
Okay.
And like my wife was like going crazy a little bit because she was like, she tried to go like find like a quiet place by a river to meditate, and like there were people everywhere. You know, everywhere you go, there's like you could hear somebody, even if you're in a, you know, kind of a quote unquote remote place. And so it's just kind of funny, like in the society that we're living in, it's sort of tough to find like these really remote places, but it's super cool that you are finding them and then sharing them with the world. It's really fun to watch.
That's my motivation, is to find them, show them to the world. So hopefully I can keep doing that.
Yeah. Please do, man. Thank you so much for sharing your story and staying up late. And I will look forward to continuing to follow the journey.
Sounds good, Chase. Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I had a great time. And to all your listeners out there, hope you enjoyed, and hope you are as fascinated with the South Pole now as I am.
Thanks a lot. I'm sure they are. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.